What's the worst way you have caught someone cheating? Was university, dorms. I lived in an apartment. Went home from class early one day cause I was sick. And saw new girlfriend's car in front of the house. Walked in. They were banging on the couch and didn't even notice me. Pretty ked. I hadn't dated the girl for very long. So I just didn't get the point. If she hadn't have wanted to be with me, she should have just said. I was most pissed about the roommate. What was he thinking? I had to live with him for another 3 to 4 months. And it just made it awkward and I never let the guy live it down. Fucking idiots. My long-term girlfriend changed her Facebook profile pic to her with another guy. We'd been together for about 5 years. I was totally thrown for a loop. That was about 9 years ago. She's still with this guy and I'm pretty sure she tells people that she was single when they started going out. This happened to me. Around 4-5 Except I was the girl and I had to see her profile picture, comments on my BF, his page, of them too. When it still said we were in a relationship on Facebook. He then took her out while we were still dating. On my credit card thinking I wouldn't notice. Just to be sure, he was making the right choice. Decisions were made. Lol. It was a hurtful cyclone of emotions. Confusion, betrayal and rage. About 3 ago now. Still aches. That taking her out on your card bit was super trashy. You dodged a bullet. A friend of my then boyfriend added me on Facebook. That friend then proceeded to tell me all of the things they did together. I immediately called my boyfriend to ask about this person and he said he didn't know them. I was like, really? My boyfriend then said they went to high school together. After further questioning, my boyfriend admitted to me that each weekend he went home. Instead of caring for his mentally ill mother as he claimed he'd be doing, he'd go to this person's house instead and they'd do Dr. GS. Get drunk. And have sex. They were apparently dating for the last 4 months of the relationship I thought I was in. The other person was a guy. Suddenly gay. I was busy packing up our belongings to move from a rental to the house that my fiancé and I were buying. He was supposed to be out golfing with his buddies and would be home later in the evening. I had already packed up most of our kitchen. It was nearing dinner time and I knew that he would be hungry after golf. So I placed a to-go order for both of us at his favorite restaurant. When I arrived at the restaurant to pick up our food, he was sitting in a booth on the same side as the other girl. They were snuggled up close. He was kissing her cheek and they were sharing a plate of food. It obviously wasn't their first date. I walked over to the table and introduced myself to the girl as his fiancé. And the B actually had the same first name as me. She got really upset with me. And threatened me with physical violence because they were in love and I needed to leave him alone so that they could be happy together. I walked out of the restaurant with tears running down my face. Left the to-go food behind. And basically broke down sobbing in the parking lot. He came out a few minutes later and told me that I needed to go back home and let him finish his date and we would talk about it later. WTF, when he got home that night. All of my stuff was gone and so was I. The fact that I had already been packing for the move made it really easy. I stayed with friends until I was able to close on the house that we were going to buy together, all by myself. I got roommates to help cover the mortgage that I had originally planned on splitting with him, and even though it was difficult for a while, I managed to push through and I have done okay for myself. He, on the other hand, not so much. He ended up with the other girl that had my same name and they both kind of suck at life. They lost the condo that they bought to foreclosure. They both can't hold down steady jobs. And they break up and get back together constantly because he's always cheating on her. Greater than the B actually had the same first name as me, makes it easier. If he shouts out a name while FC King, he's covered. Her work phone was actually a working it phone. She had the same passcode for all of her electronic devices. I knew something was up when I watched her respond to a quick email. No one smiles and acts the way she did when doing that task. How much of a sociopath do you have to be to buy a separate cheating phone, then live an incredibly risky lie about it being for work, then text your side in front of the person you say you love? All cheating is ked up, but this is infinitely more ghastly than a drunken one-night stand with a random person. It's King evil. Me and my girlfriend were both 18 and at a house party. I went to go get some more beers and came back 10 minutes later to seeing my girlfriend coming out of a bedroom with the 18-year-old brother of our host. I walked in on my fiancé F-king my best friend while I had been napping on the couch in the other room. Surprisingly, we didn't break up over this, we broke up because I got sick of her mixing tranquilizers and alcohol. And of her weird sympathetic hypochondria. Man, so many stories about cheating with best friends. Glad I don't have one, lol. Not me, but I worked with a guy whose wife swapped out their wedding picture with one of her and another guy. Then she showed it to him and told him that they were F-king and she wanted a divorce. Oh yeah. And the two guys were really close friends up until that point, or at least they acted like they were. My friend's GF of 2 years starting making out with another dude right in front of him while he was tripping on mushrooms for the first time. F-king hell. Jesus F-king Christ. Shrooms amplify the F out of your emotional states. That would have been literal hell. I came home to my apartment after landing a big promotion, only to find my wife F-king my boss in our bed. I left her right then and there. Packed up what I had and went on a journey of self-discovery where I learned a lot about myself and met the actual girl of my dreams. I was about to tell her I loved her for the first time and also explain that I was technically still married when my wife unexpectedly showed up drunk trying to win me back. The new girl smacked me when she learned I was married and left. So I consulted my sassy group of friends about how I could win her back. A divorce settlement and a few over-the-top romantic gestures later, and me and my second wife finally got our happily ever after. And even better, my best friend also ended up with my second wife's best friend. While my ex-wife ended up falling in dog's it and crying last time I saw her. It was hilarious fun for the whole family. I was looking on her, my girl at the time, laptop to post a cute pic of us on Instagram. Instead I see a picture of her giving head pav style. Dumb B didn't turn off iCloud sharing to her laptop. All while she was upstairs babysitting my niece and nephew. I was devastated, couldn't breathe, and tried to leave, but I had to stay calm because of my niece and nephew. One of the worst days of my life and I'm still shook about it. Sometimes I get caught in a rut, but I'm trying to get better. That was about 5 to 6 years ago. My GF of 5 years left me for my best friend and bandmate. The worst part to me is that the music I created with this dude was stellar. We spent a great deal of time together. Tripping and jamming. Getting into each other's heads. One day she came to me and said she wanted to go on a 2-week road trip with him. I really never considered what was happening until she came to me with this. When she got back, I finally convinced her to tell me the truth. She was in denial, or just a huge liar, that she had any feeling for this dude. She's 26, he was 21. 3 months after we break up she's with him. The best part, he went to jail a year later. Now he's on a list, and 3 years later I am with the love of my life on my way to buying a house. I was a cashier at customer service desk. We'd often do Western Union transactions. A woman came in and was picking up money. She had all the information correct except for one thing. Where the money was coming from. I told her the money was not coming from Iraq. This happened in a Texas city and a super military friendly place. She threw a fit, insulted me, etc. I called the manager and we asked her to call him. She calls him and then puts him on the phone with me. He meekly asks, "Ma'am, is there any way you can help me out?" I tell him I can't, but that he can go back to Western Union and rescind the transaction. He tells me to put her back on the phone. She grins at me and starts to walk away. She comes back 45 or so later. Crying, angry, and changes the woo form to read Phoenix. As he had lied to her about being in Iraq for at least 1 year or so and had started a new life and family in Az. That poor woman. Not me. But apparently one of my best friends was going down on his girlfriend and found a used condom inside her. I was 17 when it happened to me. I dated this girl who used to have a good friend she worked with. She'd go round to his house, which I didn't have a problem with as I'm not controlling. But basically she was F-king him. Her sister blatantly told me in front of my then girlfriend and I didn't believe her. One day I went over to their house whilst he was BLLS deep inside of her. Just walked out and haven't spoken to her or seen her since. Good riddance. Her sister sounds nice, I guess. I'd been working crazy hours on second shift. The boss saw I was getting burned out. So he sent me home early one Friday. Walked in on my first wife and some stranger banging. In my bedroom. On my bed. going at it so hard they didn't even hear me walk in. It got pretty ugly from there. There had been a couple of weird moments with this girl. She had gotten a few phone calls at really weird times, and dealt with them by basically hiding her phone screen. Once she was showing me her phone screen and kinda panicked to close a Facebook Messenger conversation that popped up. When raising concerns, she did the whole "I'm an open book" thing and gave me her phone password. I wasn't the type to want to go through her phone, especially when I knew her exes did the same. One of them once messaged me through her account saying to back off. The final straw was when she was adamant we did something together and she basically tried to gaslight me into believing it happened. I checked her phone that night. Had to see her weird text roleplays with her clingy friend. Seeing she was having him stay over all the time. Then in the next conversation, the violent ex she supposedly wasn't talking to and her had been seeing each other regularly. With messages from her of how much she loves him. A conversation with a coworker of hers was probably the worst, as it was them working out a time behind his girlfriend's back to try out some new BSM shish tea. In high school I caught my aunt in the act of cheating on my uncle. I used to cut my aunt and uncle's yard for some extra cash. My uncle was totally capable of doing it but paid me because he wanted me to have some spending money. Every Saturday I would go over and get to it. They left the garage unlocked so I could get in and get started. One Saturday my uncle was away hunting. I pull up and there's a truck I didn't recognize in the driveway. Didn't think too much about it. Opened the garage door to get the lawn mower and I could literally hear my aunt directly above the garage having sex. When I was about 7 my dad took me on a date to the movies. Something happened, can't remember what, so we got Chinese takeout instead and headed back home. When we got there my mom was f-king another guy in their bed. My mom has this evil look of satisfaction on her face. She could care less that I was the one that actually caught her in the act. The guy panicked. My dad nearly killed him. And my mom just slowly put in her robe like no big deal. Didn't happen to but recently happened to a co-worker of mine. I work in a dispatch center and someone called in a reckless driver. When this happens I have to bolo it to officers on the street. One of the officer asked who the tag belonged to, which ended up being the husband of the co-worker beside me. When we read what the call actually said, it said 1 male and 1 female in vehicle. Apparently this female wasn't supposed to be in there. Co-worker left immediately and hasn't been back since. When my uncle passed away I told my then boyfriend I needed a week or 2 alone with my family and to help my mom who was grieving. About a month later he got in a bad car accident. So I drove to his dad's house an hour away to visit him. While I was there he asked me to look up something on his phone while he was busy. Instead I got notifications from another girl who he apparently was taking out on dates and sleeping with while I was helping with my family and grieving because in his mind it was a break and perfectly reasonable. Found out my BF had an active dating site account. So my friend and I catfished him together and confronted him at the restaurant we told him to meet this made-up girl at. It was so f-king satisfying. 10 out of 10 would catch a cheater again this way.